The Omid and Kojo Show.
There
That's
he
so
is.
good. It's so good.
How is he? Why is he so good at that? Why is he so
I-
much better than everybody else at
I
that?
don't know. It shouldn't be possible. Like, how does he not flip? I don't get how he stops to flip. Because he doesn't, like, he takes off kind of normally. I know he grabs his arms together kind of like that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he goes off screen a bit, but
Yeah,
I
he
don't
does.
know.
He does grab his arms like this, or just do some weird shit with his arms.
I need to get a good tutorial from him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bro.
That'd be sick.
If he can get me doing full up, bro.
Well, barely anyone can do it.
I'm gonna have to
It's one
kiss
of the
him hard on
rarest.
his mouth.
Like a real full up is one of the rarest tricks in tricking. Like, who can actually do real ones?
Even though it's really rare, though, the reason it's so cool. I'm glad that it's so cool. It's not just because it's rare. It's because it's sick as fuck.
It is just a sick movement, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of them where it's all about how you do it. Because some of the the really good trickers who can just do everything.
Yeah.
Then there's ones of them who can like twist out of it and do all these different variations of it. But really, it doesn't matter what you do with it because that's nowhere near as cool as just being able to do the move by itself, like legit.
Yeah.
Like obviously those things would be cool if they were super legit, like doing a rodeo out or flash or whatever. But barely anyone can really do it.
Yo, imagine the double rodeo grab back out. Like
Well,
the way he's doing it as well.
He does that. He does that.
No,
on
no, I
track.
know, but like
He does
doing
it
it on grass.
perfectly.
I'm
I mean,
talking on
he
grass.
probably will or can or has. Like he's really good at them.
Well, Nelson said Kyle McLean. That's it. And yeah, Kyle
Pretty
McLean.
much.
Kyle
Sean
McLean.
Batista is
Sean
really
Batista
good at
does
them.
some cool work. He's got It's weird actually thinking about it because like him, Dom, and Kyle all have completely different techniques. They all look completely different as well. Because Sean does some crazy techniques. He can do a bunch of different techniques, but yeah, he's as sick as fuck.
Yeah, and there's probably a couple other people we're not thinking of who can do it like well, but not many though. Not many people at all. Definitely need to get a tutorial on that one. But yeah, what are you saying anyway, Omid?
Not a lot. How you doing?
Mate?
I'm gonna be eating ramen. I'm having a pre-meal meal.
That's nice. You packing on mass.
Yeah, I'm trying to get stacked. Also, bro, okay, hang on. Okay, I've got two things I want to mention. First thing, look at my shirt.
What is that?
Look, he's got Tabasco on it. Hang on.
Why do you have that?
Joe was getting rid of it, and I was like, I'm obviously gonna take that.
Like, how have you fit in that?
I don't know. Like, I think it's pretty tight on me. I don't think I own a shirt this tight, and this is like a large or whatever. But yeah,
part of your transformation into swole Omid.
I'm gonna start wearing those those tank tops that like huge dudes wear, where it looks like a thong on their back.
Be like Mateo, get the skin tight Saiyan look.
Never that.
I'd love it. I'd love it if you dress like that.
I just transitioned into the Mateo look. And the other thing, bro, this country needs to fix up.
Oh, by the way. That's
bro,
me.
That's so weird.
Don't I look like Meghan Markle?
That's so funny.
How see that?
Doing this, by the way?
Princess
I need to do this for me.
Oh, it's just gonna be your sister.
No, I did it before and it made my nose smaller, so I didn't look like my sister. I look like a different woman.
Oh, Leo says
I would tap that.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would.
Yeah. But yeah, this country, bro, what's going on? So everyone's allowed to go and get their hair cut and get hammered, but Omid can't go and lift. What is that?
I don't know why you can go to the pubs, but you can't go to the gym. I get that people are touching the same equipment and stuff, but if we're going to be going to pubs,
Well, it's easier to like regulate the hygiene and stuff and the cleaning of a gym because everyone's kind of accountable. And also, they're like, even when the gyms were like still open before, they just had cleaning stations everywhere.
That's true, actually. You could keep people who are working out, like, you can keep the area clean. You can just have extra cleaners. People can clean up after themselves. Whereas trying to get drunk people to stay away from each other. Like,
It's just not going to
how's that gonna
happen.
work?
When people get drunk, men kiss men that don't normally kiss men. So
True.
how to, would you? And also, everyone's been caged up for like 3+ months now.
True. But let's not talk about the old COVID.
It's not the COVID I'm talking about. It's the fact the gyms are closed. I want to go.
It's COVID related.
I want to go and do my lady exercises in peace. Okay.
No, I've had enough of the old COVID.
All right. Fine.
I want to talk about some
I'm mad about it.
flips. I want to talk about some back flips, front flips, and all of that jazz.
Bless.
Looking through the old camera roll because I know I had some spicy things around.
Speaking of spice, this ramen's kind of spicy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was it. That's what I wanted to mention. So, what would you guys think? Anyone who's watching live right now, and if you're watching on YouTube, then let us know in the comments. What if we did these lives, but we did an hour-long stretching routine while we're doing the live? So you'd be able to follow along. It means at least once a week you're going to get an hour-long deep stretching, and we'll keep you entertained and distracted from the pain of the stretch by talking about tricks and stuff. What do you think of that idea? Because I think it'd be pretty fun. And also, it would act as, because every tricker needs to get more flexible. No matter how flexible you are, if you get more flexible, your tricks are gonna look better and they're gonna be better.
And
So
you're
what
gonna
if we
feel
did
better.
once a week, like let's get trickers flexible initiative where we try and get everyone stretching together on the live, because that'd be quite fun.
Kojo and I used to do this when in our first few years of tricking. We spent more time in communication with one another than anybody I've ever known. We'd be on the phone in the morning, and then we'd immediately meet up and train all day.
Don't tell them this.
I'm gonna tell him this. We trained. It was because tricking was like, it was just like every single aspect of our lives was revolving around tricking, and that it's not that much different now. However, there were certain elements like the stretching part that was a lot more difficult at the time. Like I really struggled to stick to a stretching routine, whereas now it's just like embedded in my daily routine. I stretch when I first wake up, and I stretch when I go to. Someone said supreme bum bodies. I love it.
See, this is why I said, why are you
Kojo,
talking about that?
it's not gonna be a shock to anyone.
Well, about you, I've got a solid reputation to keep up as a serious educator. All right.
You're the silliest human being I've ever met. The silliest. I've never met anyone as silly as you. And your silliness has such insane levels.
It does not. I'm a serious businessman. All right, Omid, well, you brought me on to an interesting topic, actually. One that we've not discussed on the podcast before. Tricking buddies.
Oh.
Like that's something that's kind of so key to tricking, to like getting good, I think. Like you got to have tricking bros. You got to have people who you can call and talk to about your goals in tricking and like get excited about what you're trying to achieve. I feel like if you're truly going it alone and not talking to anyone about your training, then it's not going to be as good as having someone to bounce ideas off, see how they're training, see what's working for them. Because me personally, like before I met Omid, now when I started before Omid, I could already do stuff. Like when I met Omid, I could already like do like double cork. But Omid actually really helped my mindset in some ways. Like I've copied a lot of different people, like taken different elements from their training. But Omid would just train in this stupid way where he'd be trying double corks when he couldn't do a cork yet. But because he really, really believed that he could get these tricks. And I noticed that even though he was slamming and looked like he was going to break his legs every session like 20 times, he was getting tricks a lot faster than I did. Even though he wasn't like, yeah, there wasn't really good technique or anything like that. It was all stupid. But because he really believed that he would get these tricks, he got them much faster. And then when I took that on into my own training, I started improving way faster. So I think having like training buddies is really key, because Omid's taken things from my training too. And then I've taken things from other trickers' trainings. Like you've got to have those connections so you can steal the things that are working and apply them to your own training.
I mean, that's all it was in the earlier stages, like trying to build, like, because you're starting off with a complete blank canvas. So you're just kind of looking around. Like my thing was, I was like a leech when I first started. I would literally, like, anybody new that would come in the gym. And it was because I was like also a fucking moron. But anybody new that would come in the gym, I would want to talk to them and see if there was something that I could learn from them, because I was struggling with certain things and I could see these people that weren't struggling with them. And I was like, maybe that person has the key to me learning this trick. Maybe they can say something in a way that I understand, or maybe they're approaching it in a way that works for me. And after doing that enough, I kind of started to build up this understanding of how to understand tricks. But it was all because I had these people around me that, whether they liked it or not, I was going to hassle them until I was getting the information I needed. But then after a bit, I reined it in a little bit, and now I just hassle Kojo, and Kojo hassles me.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, I think anyone, if you don't have someone to train with, then I think a really good way you can still have that is just by getting involved with the online tricking community, like finding people who are your level and commenting on their stuff, and then maybe they comment on your stuff, and then maybe your best mates. That's what happened with Peen and Kyle. They didn't know each other in person, but they met each other through the internet somehow, and then they met up together, and then they became tricking buds. So it is a useful tool. Like, make the most of it.
It's definitely made such a, like, this is why I've always kind of credited so much of my successful years of training to having you around. Because if it wasn't, if you and I weren't training together, and we weren't like, because especially when we were younger, when we were first starting tricking, well, when I first started tricking, Kojo was always telling me things that, because he was like maybe a year ahead of me in terms of like doing flips, and he'd always be telling me things that he'd discovered around the time that I was at, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I think I get it, but then it wouldn't really actually resonate with me until a few weeks later, and then I'd go up to him and be like, yeah, you were right. I didn't have a fucking clue what I was talking about. I thought I got it, but I do now. And then even then after that, like, it's just good having people that are around you that can, like, I don't know, kind of enforce, that can kind of inspire you to look at things in a different way. I thought that was just you then. I thought you just changed. But yeah, having those people around is really important. I didn't even mention my actual point. The thing, so before you cut me off about us being bum boys.
I didn't cut you off.
Yeah, about that bit.
About the bum boy bit, yeah.
The bum boy bit. We used to stretch while on the phone or on Skype together, because one of us would usually be like, oh, I can't be asked tonight, or I forgot, or I'm tired, or whatever. But then the other person would like carry the other person and just be like, no, get on Skype, we need to stretch. And we just stretch for like 30 minutes to an hour. And it kind of helped him ingrain that that habit into both of our lives. And then it got to a point where, you know, we don't need to be on the phone to one another to stretch.
It just keeps you accountable.
Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, that'll help all of you lot as well, because 2 or 3 times a week, if you're watching the live, then you best get your legs stretched.
All right. Well, speaking of stretched, I'm just going to get nice and loose, because it's ranting time. Need to crack my neck. All right, so what I wanted to rant about today, I hope it works. I hope you can see it on the video. But basically, It's about bad advice. Because this is my whole job, like trying to find good advice, trying to explain things well, then bad advice always, it hurts me. It hurts me to read every time I see it. Because I learn a lot from it, because I'm like, like being able to identify why bad advice is bad advice teaches you a lot. But here's a post from Marco Lindley, and he's doing a box cutter and he asks for tips. And I wanted to go over some of these tips. So here's his box cutter in a minute. There he goes. Look at him go. There, box cutter. But it didn't work out quite well. He couldn't turn his hips for the hook. So what are these comments? Oh, my face is in the way. All right, it's okay. I'm scrolling. Don't worry. It's scrolling. Oh, if I can bloody see any of them, how am I meant to rant if I can't see? All right, this one. Swing your right leg much more on the cork. Just that. The other part is easier. So there's one. If your box cutter's already over flipping, if you swing your leg more, it's just going to make it way harder to not over flip. So there's some advice that's just going to make him worse. Like, look, there we go. In the comments, we got some bad advice. He's just got a kick. If you take off wrong and you flip way too much, then the kick will never be good. If you're on the wrong axis, if you do a round off gymnastic full and try and do a hyper hook out of it, it's not going to be a good kick. So it's always people who don't know much giving really bad advice. And I see it all the time,
Leo, just a quick thing in future. When he's going off, just let him see it through.
Well, I wish I could see these. I should have got him on my laptop so I could really do a review. Like what Towel said, you need to treat it just like your hook kick. Perhaps the formula in your head should be cork step over hook. There we go. If you do a cork and you've whipped it back like a cork swing through, trying to do a step over hook at the end isn't going to make it a good box cutter. You're on the wrong axis. You need to take off with your head and chest in the right position, or it's not going to ever work. So there's bad advice again. Spot the launch, then again after you kick. Now, that is the best advice in the post, because he's saying to spot the target as you take off. And if you're spotting your target as you take off, then you're not leaning backwards. So that's going to make you take off in an upright position. And that, like, if he'd spotted there, that would have put him on a better axis. So that's the best advice that was given. But most of this is just people either saying things that are way too vague and don't help, or people saying things that are straight up wrong and going to make it worse. And I see this all the time. I don't give tips on tricks that I'm not like decent at or haven't studied. So I don't know why everyone does this all the time.
Because they're just trying to help. Like some people are just trying to help, and then they unfortunately don't realize that the information they're giving to somebody is incredibly counterproductive. But the thing is, like, I don't know, what do you suggest then? Or have you still got more to rant about before?
I just wanted to see if there's, because I remember there being some that were like really, really stupid.
Okay, I'll let it play out. You carry on.
I wish it would scroll up a little bit, because that next one looks good. Okay. Oh, here we go. Try and practice going for hypers first. It may seem like an unnecessary prerequisite, but really blah, blah, blah. Marco can do dub-dub. He doesn't need to practice hypers for his box cutter. If you land in hyper, your hips are facing the wrong bloody way for a hook kick. So that's not going to help. Landing in hyper is going to train you to do the takeoff wrong for a box cutter, because it's a different takeoff and it's a different landing position. Most good box cutters turn the hips to land more in semi. If your hips are in hyper, you're not going to be able to do the proper bloody box cutter. And I see this. I see this all the time, and it pisses me off. But yeah.
What the fuck was that?
Omid, what was it you just told the people? When he's ranting, just leave him to it. Don't interrupt. Don't be doing that. Just leave me to it. All right?
Listen, don't start getting shirty with me. This is the Omid and Kojo show. This is not the Kojo show, so keep your fucking mouth shut.
This is a Kojo rant, though.
I don't give a
But
fuck. I
I'm
can
going.
still laugh at you, man, when you're fucking making the sound like a gaggle of geese.
Oi, it was warranted. All right, a comment like that, guy like me, seen a comment
What
like
comment? What are you on about?
that, but just the hyper thing.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
Landing in hyper doesn't help with box cutters. Doesn't help. But yeah. Well, I don't know. What do you think about this? Because this is a hard one for me because I'm just so in it. I
Well, it's
spend all
closer-
day every day looking at technique and trying to figure out the best ways to explain technique to other people. Literally every single day. So I guess I'm hyper aware to it, and it really winds me up.
I just see it as like, I don't know. It used to wind me up a lot more, especially when it would happen to me. It would piss me off beyond belief. Like, you know, when you're at a session and you're doing some shit and it's like you're warming up. It would always seem to happen when I was warming up or when I would have the worst session of my life. I was having the worst session of my life. I couldn't do any of the tricks that I can do in my sleep. But like when I was just fucked, exhausted or whatever, and someone had come over who can't do half of the things that are necessary in order to give advice on this trick, and they're not invested in tricks that much, and they're like, oh, by the way, and then they try and go into like a 10-minute rant about this thing, and I'm like, how about you go fuck yourself? I've got no patience for this. And like, as I've got a little bit like more removed from those kind of things, that's the thing, like, you can't, for me, I can't be too invested in it because it pisses me off so much that I have to just see it and just be like, all right, cool. It is like
that. I don't know. I don't know. It's just a really annoying one. It used to happen a lot more early in my tricking. Like I'd have people who couldn't do the move that I was trying to give me tips on it all the time. It was really bloody annoying. But
well, no, I do
so
understand. I do understand though, because you are like, you're so close to it because you literally spend all of your day looking into it, and it's like, I don't know, like, but for me, I'm also aware. I think it's because I'm not quite as good at it as you, because obviously
it's not your job. It's not your job.
I think I'm a decent coach, but I am also aware that like I could still give people advice and it be not quite what they would need. Because at the end of the day, it's a whole skill.
Better. You're just not spending all your time doing this. I don't.
No,
think
that's what I mean. So
spending all their time doing this.
I don't know. I think.
Oh, where's Omid gone? Oh, he's back.
I had a FaceTime come in. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do. My laptop was going crazy on my phone. I was like, chill out. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just yeah. You're way better at it, so obviously it's gonna piss you off.
Like, I just wanted to say, like, we got another one. I know he's just baiting me out at this point. But Leo said, I reckon 30 hook kicks a day will sort it. And it's like, did you listen? But he's baiting me. He's baiting me out. But I'm going to take the bait. I'm going to chew on that bait. So doing a load of hook kicks every day will help. But the problem with his box cutter there is not that he has a really bad hook kick. Like, I don't know how good his hook kick is, but it's not the quality of his hook kick that's the problem. It's the fact that he's taking off wrong in the cork. He's not on the right axis. If you're on the wrong axis, no matter how good your hook kick is, you cannot do a good hook kick. You try doing a back tuck and doing a hook kick in it.
That's the thing.
It doesn't work because you're on the wrong axis. You'd have to go more around the side. And the same thing applies to corks. So yeah, that's the simplest way I can explain it.
I think that's a good analogy though, because it's kind of like, if you're doing the technique so wrong, you're essentially doing a different trick. It's like you can't try and do a box cutter if you're only doing a gainer. It doesn't matter how good your hook kick is, it's never going to be a box cutter. So if you're doing the cork way too flipped, you're not going to be able to get your body in the position to execute the box cutter. So it is like a different trick. You need to view it as like changing the thing.
Yeah, and that's what we tried to teach on Kojo's Trick Lab. You got to get the base right to be able to get things really good. having a perfect hook and round kick isn't going to make your full round and full hype hooks perfect. You got to change the takeoff for those tricks so that you're in the right position. Nelson said, how do you all feel about the fake stances people have been talking about? I'll let you start with that one because you know me with terminology stuff. I find it, as much as I'm into technique, I find terminology stuff incredibly boring. I think I'm more into how are good tricks performed? What makes good tricks good? How do you do them? How do you explain that to people so that they can also do the good tricks? When it comes to all the names, I think it's very, like, it's useful. Like, you want to know the names somewhat, but people who try and take it really seriously, like, no, this is called this. And it's like, it's not though, because there isn't a rule book. At no point did everyone agree that anything was called anything. Like, things are only called what the most amount of people call them. Really, that's how names are created in tricking. Well, so names don't actually mean that much. So that's why I don't get too into the names, because they're all meaningless at the end of the day. They could all be completely different 10 years from now. So people who like try to really study the names of tricks, big waste of time. But,
well, what is he referring to with this? Because I don't
fake
even
stances.
know.
You know, there's like fake semi and fake complete and all that.
No.
Well, there's that.
Am I out of touch or so? I think this was just gone under my radar. I don't know what would a fake semi be.
Fucking hell. Fakes. I don't want to get it wrong now. I want to look.
Well, Nelson, explain what it is, and I'll say how stupid it is. Let's do that.
No, I think it's like. This is a guess. I think it's like not landing in semi, so you've got like the other leg in front, but you're not facing the same direction. Oh, it's hard explaining in words.
He said it's just front swing from hyper.
So
you don't do the extra rotation.
You don't do the extra rotation, but you have the leg out in front, ready to front swing.
So it's almost like, even though let's see if you did gain a fake semi. You would essentially
do like gain a flash, but land with the
left leg in front, and then just go the opposite direction.
Yeah,
that's fucking mental. That is absolutely insane.
Well, people do that though.
No, I know. But what was his question? How do you feel about the stances? Well, I mean, I think that's an incredibly, because for me, in terms of aesthetics. Like, because I know what you're referring to now. In terms of aesthetics, I think it's just a little bit too, unless someone could do it and make it look super, super dope. But I can't really imagine that. It's going to be kind of disjointed. Now, the only person I can imagine doing something like this and making it look cool is Alex Hunter.
I didn't know if we were talking about the name, like how much. I thought we were talking about how much the names matters rather than the tricks themselves. But if we're talking about the tricks themselves...
Well, I don't know. He just said...
I think there's a lot of good uses for it. I think you could do a lot with it.
He said, how do you feel about the fake stances people have been talking about? If you mean... I mean, with the terminology, I'm just like... I mean,
whatever.
I guess...
Yeah,
the terminology is a little bit like, whatever. Like, but I think it does make sense to differentiate between a normal semi because it has because it has more rotation than a fake semi. But this is literally the first time I've heard of anybody name it.
It'll probably have a different name in the future. And I would. Nelson sent me some info on it, and I'll look at that afterwards because
it'll end the whole line otherwise.
Yeah. I think it's pretty cool. I saw Shotei do it with double B and do it. He did it to like raise and then pop full and then load his shit out of it to triple cork, which is mad, of course. But I think it can be cool. Like Keenan Carr does it, and he does it really good.
He does that kind of shit.
Nelson says fake semi is just hyper though. I'm like, yeah. Like you could just as easily say hyper front swing. It's whatever.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Do you know in the same way that mega, some people you can land mega like with the leg behind or the leg in front. I'm sure people have different names for it, but yeah, having different names for tiny little differences. Yeah. it makes sense in some ways because you'd be like, oh yeah, well we want to have different names for everything, but at this point where tricking's at the moment, kind of a big waste of time because no one's going to stick to all these names. No one's going to spend the time memorizing them because most people are focused on getting good at tricks, not memorizing stupid names.
Well, there's a lot of things that kind of come and go. Like I remember back when Ben Herold was doing crazy shit. He would do like a lot of reverse pop stuff. And I remember when I first heard it, I was just like, this is getting out of hand now, because like soon we're just going to get to a point where it's going to, you'll essentially do a cork swing cork, but you just do like a little tap dance thing in the middle, and you'll call it like a cork miss leg reverse pop vanish cork, and it's kind of like let's just kind of pack it in. We all know what we mean in terms of the terminology, so it doesn't need to.
Well, that's a bit of an interesting question, actually. Like, how far do you go with terminology? Because there's so many different ways to do a trick. That's like what I like. The way I look at swing kicks, for example, I'd say anything that's under horizontal is a swing vert kick. Anything that's horizontal and over is a cork variation. And there's a huge amount of difference. You could do it like fully inverted or horizontal. And I'd say both of those are corks. So yeah, you could warrant giving those different names. But I think it gets to a point where it's just a big waste of time, and who cares? You know, like who cares really? Tricking's a visual thing. That's why I don't think the names are that important, because like if you want to talk about a trick, then you show someone the trick. You show them a video. You show them frames of the trick. Tricking is a visual art. It's like if artists like painting stuff, if they like wanted to talk about a painting and they didn't look at it, they kind of described it to each other. It's a bit of a waste of time. Just show them the painting and point to what you're talking about. And it's the same with tricking. Like, show them the piece, show them the combo, point to what you're talking about.
No, I feel that.
I don't know. There's a bit of a point, but yeah.
I mean, I think it definitely has a boundary. I think currently it doesn't. I think we've kind of covered everything at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
there'll always be new things popping up, you know?
There'll be new things occasionally, but it's kind of like we don't need to because that's the thing. I think overcomplicating things means that it doesn't necessarily have a positive effect, which is fine. Exactly. Like if you want to do some shit that makes it more complicated, do your thing. But if it then starts to have any kind of negative effect, then it's just like, stop it. Because like, I know even for me, when I started, half of the terminology that we use now, like semi wasn't a thing when I started. It was always just carry through. And
we didn't even. You wouldn't even say like hyper two. You just say like cork. Just say, cork carry through with a cork extra half, and we get on just fine. Like
and I think if it starts making everything like difficult, especially if people like some people are using certain terminology and other people aren't. Like if someone said that to me just in general conversation about a fake semi, and like look at that just then, like I wanted you to describe it and you didn't really know how to, and it's like having all of this shit just means you can kind of fucking. It just makes everything way more difficult. If you'd have just said hyper front swing, I would have gone, oh, okay, cool.
Well, Alex Hunter said it great. Lately, when people ask, what was that? What's that called? I just say, it's what I did. And it makes sense. It's like, imagine, like in music as well. Now, I know obviously you have different like keys and notes and all of that. I don't know much about music, so I probably shouldn't be talking. But you don't give every single sound a different name. Like any sound people can make, you know.
Yeah.
You don't, like,
but
it
they have families.
Have a separate name for every single possible sound.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The same with tricking. Like, you don't need a name for every single tiny little thing. It just is what it is. Like some movements, you know.
I think having those families is really important. Like the family of movement. Like you've got swings, you've got pops, you've got punches and things like that. And then you do go a little bit deeper into that, where you've then got semis and megas and all that kind of shit. But I think honestly, past that, like even stuff like boneless, like past that, and even around that, it's to me, it's kind of a little bit like, what are we doing here? Like, how many times are you going to tap your feet on the ground before you do a trick that already exists and then call it a new trick?
Yeah, like I think there's not necessarily anything wrong with having names for these things, but acting like people need to know these names is ridiculous because they don't. What you got there? Is that cake?
Cinnamon swirl, mate.
Ooh,
My sister made it from scratch.
damn,
Penkridge.
killing it.
But yeah, sorry.
But yeah, I was gonna say, I think overcomplicating tricking is something we really, really need to avoid. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, actually. I've always thought about, to be honest, with my teaching, because I want to be able to teach stuff like in depth. I want to try and give people a really, really good understanding of how, not just how to do the trick, but how it works and how they can adapt it and use it for different purposes, and how different people do the trick, so they can choose which way they want to do it, or at least understand how to like change the look or the inversion of a trick. But at the same time, I don't want to be one of those people who just talks in a load of jargon and makes it really complicated. So I think the key there is to try and explain complex topics in the most basic possible terms. And I think the same thing should be with terminology. We should be trying to make it, like, even though tricking is complex, we should be trying to make it as simple as we possibly can. Really.
Well, just because it doesn't require the complexity in terms of discussion, because it's complex enough with the movements. We don't need to make it more complicated. It's fucking nuts enough as it is. But like, it's got me thinking though, because I was doing a Skype private the other day, and I naturally, like, if I'm starting a combo with a cheat 9, for example, I will say cheat 9. If there's another trick, any trick going into a cheat 9, I say vanish. And that's just kind of been ingrained within my terminology, and that's the way that I would describe it. But then I was talking to the girl that I was teaching, and I was just like, it's not even necessary for me to say vanish, because when I said it to her, I just said it out of the norm. And she was like, what's a vanish? And I was like, oh, it's just a cheat 9. And it got me thinking about the whole thing. And it is just kind of overcomplicating things, because it just means you're adding another word in there that you don't need to. This was the other day. This was a while ago now. But it just loses the effect once you realize that you can make it a lot more simple. There's no point.
Yeah, I don't really say vanish anymore. There's never really a need to, for the most part.
Well, vanish raise, I'll say. Vanish raise and vanish side swipe and stuff.
Yeah, I guess, because then it's not like front swing.
Yeah. But with vanish kicks, I mean, to be honest, it's because I haven't mentioned cheat 9 in the longest time.
Yeah.
I don't talk about cheat 9 that often anymore.
I don't know. I'm saying all this shit, but when it comes to terminology stuff, I don't have my mind made up. I don't know what's best. I just think as long as there's not a governing body in tricking that's setting like the actual names of things and everyone kind of agrees that those are the names, if that's not the case, then it's all a bit of a waste of time, because everyone's just going to call tricks what they want to call tricks, because no one has any more authority than anyone else to name the tricks. I mean, you could argue the person who created it, but who created a fake semi, Like, no one has the authority to be naming these tricks. So what's the point? Just kind of go with what most people are going with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But this is comment here, a little bit off topic, but Seb Van Wensen said, my mom always calls me a dancer when I trick. Ugh. Right. I've been tricking for about 8 years now. I've traveled the world doing this sport. I've done some really cool things. I've done some things that I think are really cool, and they're really impressive to me. Every single time my mom ever talks about tricking, she goes, oh, you should be a dancer. I'm like, she was like, you'd be a great dancer. Why don't you dance? I'm like, because I don't love dancing. Like,
my mom says that to me as well. That I
all
should be
the time. all the time. I'm like, I have to tell her, I'm like, why can't, like, what do you not understand about me not being able to just be like, okay. Like, is that what you expect? I'll just go, okay, this thing that I'm clearly obsessed with, I'm just going to not do that anymore, and I'm just going to do a completely different thing.
You just start doing contemporary.
I'm just like deep into ballet or some shit. And it's like, come on, Mom. Like, what do you expect? I do love her though. Because she does like my flips sometimes. But most of the time, she either cusses me out or she just kind of focuses on everything else that's going on in the gym. But I haven't shown my mum my tricks in like probably like 4 years, 3 years or something. It's been a while. I just kind of gave up after a bit.
My parents have been more interested in my flips lately, like this past year. I think it's because it's my job now.
Yeah, it's because of KTL.
Yeah.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, it does. It does, I guess. It is what I do for work. Someone said, yeah, my parents don't care, think it's a waste of time. I think that's a lot of people are in that boat. It's a common place to be in. I don't think it's something to worry about because it's at the end of the day, who cares? I think most young, like teenagers and young adults are doing things that their parents think are a waste of time, whether that's like going clubbing or doing flips on one leg and kicking the air. Like, no matter what it is, like most people are going to be doing something like that.
But it's weird though, because like from my experience, from like my friends' parents and stuff over the years, they'll be much more understanding and supportive of their kids just going out and getting hammered, as opposed to the way that they might view some kind of hobby that they're doing or whatever. It's so strange that the social norms of like going out and getting drunk and, you know, just young people being young people compared to the amount of people that have told me over the years you're wasting your time. It's so crazy. It's so insane to me.
Really?
Huh?
No one's really said that to me.
Both my parents, when I first started, said it, and one of my friend's dad said it as well. He was like, it's just a bit of, he didn't say you're wasting your time, but he said it's just a bit of pissing about.
Yeah, but I can see that. You just wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it.
Mm. Oh,
you know,
whoa.
We could think playing Fortnite would be pissing about, but some people...
they do end up turning it into a multi-million-dollar career. But we've got an actual tricking mom here.
Yes, finally. About time. About time.
She said, I'm a proud tricking mom. My son is 10. And that's so cool that not only that you're a tricking mom, but it's cool that you're watching this. Because but it makes sense. It's like she's actually supporting what her kid is doing, and also making sure that making sure that the people, like her son might have spoken about us or whatever, and she's probably making sure that we're not delinquents.
No, we're all right. We're businessmen.
Yeah, very serious businessmen. Speaking of businessmen, the Sobriety pre-order is still live. You got a few more days, and it's actually really, really great. Thank you ever so much for everyone who's already ordered.
It's actually great for once.
For once in my life. No, I appreciate everyone that's ordered, and I'm grateful. Thank you. And
making those big moves.
Yeah, we've got lots of shit coming soon, so enjoy. I don't want to swear now because the mom's in the in the chat.
It's all right. This is a tricky mom. This is a cool mom.
Oh yeah, she's a cool mom.
Like, you don't have to worry about that. Oh
yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
Someone said I'd give up a kidney for my mum to trick. Imagine a mum and son tricking duo.
Do you really want that? Do you really want your mom to be like, she's hitting rap full swing, cork snappy to split. She's just wrecking you. She's getting up. She's like dropping back into split again. You know, like what if your mom was way better than you at tricks?
Oh, bro, I'd just stop. I'd stop and I'd take up like, I don't know, crocheting or something. It's not happening. Also, Willie. So Willie Ding asked if I was going to Portugal this time around, and no, I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm trying to be a conservative Omid, but I'll be out there soon enough. I want to come up
Soon
to
enough.
Sheffield and see Dilly.
He's going to be chilling in the sun in Portugal. Yeah, big moves are on the way. I mean, if you've been listening to these lives for a while, I'm vocal about my goals, and I'm trying to have a house in Portugal, mainly because the weather there is good enough for me to have a home spring floor. So that's always been the goal since I was 16, like to have a house with a home spring floor and train on it. Don't really want anything else. That's why I started this whole website. That's one of the main reasons, so that I could get to the point where I can have my own spring floor. I know some people just have a spring floor, but living in England, the opportunities are limited. I know there's other places where it's harder to get a spring floor, but because the weather's so bad, then you couldn't really have one outside. And for you to have one inside, then you need like a warehouse space or a huge barn or something. And I live in a city, so I don't have that. So, yeah, moving to Portugal.
And even so, everything's way more expensive.
True.
Like, and also, it's like, it's way more expensive. The weather's way worse. And there's not little coffees.
Exactly.
Like,
Portugal,
I haven't
they're
been
little
to Portugal.
coffees.
I haven't been to Portugal in years. But I'll never forget the little coffees. Never.
The little coffees in Portugal are popping. They're like, you can get them for like 60 cents. Oh, I'm gonna have so many little coffees. Just
Bro,
you wait.
You're gonna be vibrating everywhere. Just so much coffee coursing through your veins. You're just gonna be like.
People watching, drop us a comment. What's your like dream? What are your dreams?
Yeah, tell us your dreams.
A dream like tricking situation. Who else is trying to get their own home spring floor? Because I can't be the only one. I know there must be plenty of trickers out there who are actively like trying to get to the point where they can have that. Because it'd be so nice, like not having to rely on any gym owner or anything like that. Always having your own music, not having to wait for session times, just being able to train exactly when you want. And if it's outside as well, that's so much nicer than in a gym. I just want to get to that point and then have a good few years where I'm just out on my spring floor and I'm chilling. I'm not really going anywhere. I'm just using my spring floor, getting really, really good at tricks. Someone says, want to build my own pad, can train with Corona, no problems. See, that's the dream. Someone said, I've been thinking about buying a place in Spain. Spain is super cheap. Yeah, the houses are mad cheap in Spain. Portugal's really cheap as well. I think Portugal's a bit nicer, though I've not seen all of Spain, so that's don't listen to me.
What do you reckon? You think there'll be a point where there'll be like an influx of people getting floors? Because I think, especially after lockdown and stuff, there's been so many people that have just ended up not getting floors, not being able to get to gyms. What are you doing?
You give me an idea.
What?
Making spring floors accessible for a reasonable price. You've given me that's a solid business idea right there. Okay, so that's like the actual springs themselves aren't that expensive.
Mm.
If you can find some kind of either cheaper version of plywood or some alternative, and then a cheap top roll, like someone said, yeah, how are you going to do that? And it's like, yeah, people didn't think I'd be able to do Kojo's Trick Lab either, but now we have over 200 hours of videos and over 1,000 members. It's like, you can make these things happen. If you're prepared to put in work all day, every day, you make these things happen. Yeah. And a spring floor business based around providing cheap spring floors that people can set up easily. Now, as tricking grows, then the market for that's going to get bigger and bigger. You guys have already demonstrated there's less than 30 people in this chat. And there's already people who want to have their own spring floor.
But
now, if we can make it available for like $1,500, and it's packaged in a way where there's like simple instructions, it's easy to assemble, it can last outside. Like I think that could be a viable business, and it perfectly possible. I just have to figure out how to make it cheap. And when I say this, I know these things aren't super easy. It's just normally you got to have these ideas. And then I'll spend like 2-3 years like keeping it on a back burner, like developing the idea before getting it to the point where it's an actual thing. But that is totally possible, and I think that's a good idea.
Mm. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even even
So someone said, "Go on, you say yours first. You say yours."
Yeah, so in terms, because like the biggest problem with that would probably be like the actual wood. But if you had those instructions and you sold all of the smallest bits, and also like you could essentially kind of drop ship, like if you could get suppliers in different countries and stuff. So because otherwise it's just going to be, if it's super localized and you can only do it in the country that you're at, then there's going to end up being it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if you can end up drop shipping it essentially, where you have suppliers that you work with in different countries that can then outsource, like in America, it's probably going to be pretty popping.
Well, so all right. I mean, that would be a possibility as a way of distributing it. But let's think about the actual floor itself. Someone said it would probably be hard to compete with air tracks, though. I disagree, because air tracks aren't. I don't think they're good.
I don't like it.
They're a completely different thing. Like, yeah, okay, air tracks are good for getting bounce from, but when you land something on an air track, you do triple cork on an air track. Have you done triple cork? No. Anyone who looks at it, you've done it on an air track. Whereas you do it on a spring floor, you've done triple cork, because it's different. Air tracks are more like a trampoline. They're not, whereas spring floors are closer to the actual ground. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be the bounciest spring floor in the world. As long as it's softer than grass and bouncier than grass and it's consistent, then that's a major training benefit. And if it was really cheap, so if it was like a lesser version of a real spring floor, but it was cheap and manageable to get, and like instead of wood, and I mean, why not some kind of thick plastic? I'm just throwing out ideas. There's probably a reason why they can't use plastic, but I'm sure there are alternatives. Like there will be a way. You got to start with believing there's a way anyway.
I feel like plywood is probably going to be the most cost effective and also durable, because if that we thought
of for now, but there could be other things. You just got to keep your mind open, because it could be anything. Who knows what gymnasts aren't trying because of their regulations?
Yeah. I was just saying that's probably why it is the way it is right now, though. Just because currently the way people have looked into it, that's just what is going to be the most cost effective or whatever. Someone
said, but the floor is not the problem. The place weather is. So we need to solve that problem. We need a floor that can be rained on, but after it dries, then it's fine. It doesn't rot, and it's not slippy. And these things are possible. Like start by believing it's possible. I mean, if humans can get rockets into space, then they can manage to make a bouncy surface that doesn't rot. You know? Yeah. Like I think it's possible. It's just people aren't trying to do it. You've got to think, who is trying to make outdoor spring floors that can last in rainy conditions? No one. Why would anyone be trying to do that? If you're a spring floor manufacturer, you're selling to gyms who are putting them inside.
Yeah.
No one's actively trying to make outdoor spring floors. So it's probably not being explored that much. There's probably not been anyone who's like put a lot of time of their life, like a couple thousand hours, into researching and trying to figure out how to make the best outdoor spring floor. No one will have done that, because why would they? But now there is a market for it. People want it, and it could accelerate tricking massively. And Sam Kojo's going to do it. No, I might do it. I might do it. It might be when I'm 40, but could still do it, you know?
Yeah, get it. I don't know. I like the idea. Owen Trick said have turf on top of the floor instead of carpet. Might be cool.
I mean, that AstroTurf, that can handle the elements. I'm just thinking of, what if there's some thick plastic layer like that, and then AstroTurf, and then the springs? I don't like. Why wouldn't that work? Why wouldn't thick plastic work?
What, for the top layer?
No, instead of the plywood.
Oh, okay.
Because it has a bit of bend. It can have a bit of bend to it, depending on the type of plastic.
Yeah,
I guess durable. It can survive the elements fine.
Maybe it's the friction, like the slipping.
Slipping of what?
The plastic.
Slipping off what?
Slipping on the other plastic, because the way you have to do it. Oh no! It's not like that, is it?
Plastic.
No. Sorry, I was thinking, because I've seen a floor before where the wood is essentially like slightly folded as it's squared, It's not just like a thing. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. But
yeah, don't do
yeah,
that.
sorry, I forgot about that. But
Yeah, don't do that.
yeah, no, I mean it makes sense. Like that kind of plastic would in theory work. I
See,
don't.
and people throwing out these good ideas. My granddad is an engineer. Yeah, ask your granddad. Ask him. See what he says. Someone says, "Will you hit the plastic and hurt your feet on impact?" You'd have something softer on top of it,
Yeah.
so that that wouldn't happen.
I mean, it would. It's definitely doable. Imagine the way carpet is, the way the carpet is on normal spring floor top rolls. There's definitely a way of like encasing that foam. Instead of having that carpet, you encase the entire foam thing with something that's just like completely waterproof. Because like there's fabrics, like look at clothing, like any waterproof clothing, you can get like almost cotton feeling material where the water just kind of runs off. So you can get that top roll covered in that, and then you haven't got to worry about the rain. You can literally sweep it off, and it won't.
Yeah, and sweep it off. Give it a wipe with a towel. Someone said, I would guess that turf and plastic would be more expensive. And it might be, but if it works better, the cost isn't actually the issue. Like if you look at a normal spring floor, springs and then plywood and top roll, which is made out of foam, like densely compacted foam, like they're sold. Spring floors are sold for a lot of money. But to produce the actual materials for it, if they're mass produced, those aren't actually incredibly expensive materials. Like realistically, the companies that make these spring floors, I know they sell them for like 14 grand, but I bet the production costs are well under $1,000 per floor.
Yeah.
Like probably a lot under. So the thing is, if it ended up with the plastic, which makes it more usable outside, but it ends up costing like £800 or something to make, that's not that bad. If you're selling it for like $1.5 grand, and we're not making full size floors because these will be more personal floors, so they wouldn't need to be quite as big. You know?
We could just give people the option as well.
Someone said, Neve said, oh, switch my camera. Neve said, my dad said, think vinyl with removal carpet top layer. And it's like, yeah, there's loads of ideas. And this is just us talking about it right now without any research at all. Yeah. But then you give it like 3 years of researching, talking to people who have built spring floors. In fact, I already know one of them, that Valentin guy from China. He's always messaging me about his floors. So finding out more about the industry and the different potential materials. And then you get to the sampling point where you're like buying different things and trying them out, seeing what works best, seeing what lasts the longest, seeing what's the cheapest. And maybe 5 years from now, then I'll be able to sell spring floors for $1.5 grand, and they'll be packaged in a pretty small container, and they'll be easy to set up and they'll last for really long. Maybe. Like, I think you've got to start by believing it, and then you at least have a chance of making it happen. But I don't think that's so ridiculous. I think that's perfectly possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board. It seems like a really, because there's a hole in the market. There's an actual need, and there's a thing that people want, that if you can make it affordable enough, because I think that the price points do make a big difference. Because currently, if you're trying to buy like a full spring floor from a company, then you're talking K's on K's.
Well, another thing is, when it comes to selling it, how easy would that be to sell? Because what do? Every single one of the top trickers and free runners in the world, they all want a spring floor. People with hundreds of thousands of followers, they want a spring floor. You give them one. They put it at their house in exchange for promotion. And I know only the richer trickers will be able to afford it, but those richer trickers, they're seeing your business. They're seeing this spring floor being used by people they look up to. It's possible.